Let's talk about the story of one man, two brand new towers, and what many people have called the artistic crime of the century.
You know, the man at the heart of all this, Philippe Petit, he really sees his life as a fairy tale. And in this fairy tale, well, the entire world is his stage. And like all good fairy tales, this one starts with a little spark of fate, but in the most random place you can imagine, a dentist's waiting room in Paris, all the way back in 1968. A 17-year-old Philippe Petit is sitting there, and he's about to stumble upon his destiny.
So he picks up a magazine and bam, he just freezes. He's looking at a picture of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. I mean, they weren't even built yet, just a drawing. But right then and there, this impossible dream was born. He ripped the page right out of the magazine, walked out of the office, and yeah, he put up with his toothache for another week because he now had his dream.
Okay, so you have this totally insane dream. Now what? Well, a dream this big doesn't just happen. It takes obsession. It took 6 long years of relentless planning, practice, and what Petit himself loved to call his conspiracy.
I mean, if you're going to walk a wire between the tallest buildings in the world, you probably need some practice, right? He treated other world-famous landmarks as his dress rehearsals. First, he illegally strung his wire between the towers of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and then he did it again between the pylons of the Sydney Harbor Bridge. Every walk was a lesson, getting him one step closer to the main event in New York. This guy literally turned into a master spy. He faked press credentials for a magazine that didn't even exist, took reconnaissance photos from a helicopter, and get this, he even used an injury to his advantage. He stepped on a nail, which got him crutches, and those crutches got him sympathy from the security guards. They just saw a clumsy guy who needed help, not a brilliant conspirator casing the joint.
And you have to understand, to him, this was never a stunt. He called it le coup, the coup. It was an artistic takeover. It required absolute precision, total secrecy, and a team of very loyal but also very, very terrified accomplices. And pulling off a coup this audacious meant they had to take on the towers themselves, under the cover of darkness.
All right, so the night finally arrives, August 6th, 1974. After 6 years of dreaming, this is it. Go time. The team splits up. Half for the North Tower, half for the South, and they begin to sneak in. The tiniest mistake now, and the whole thing is over. Can you just imagine the tension? It must have been absolutely suffocating. For hours, they're just hiding in the dark, listening to every single footstep, every cough, every radio crackle, just wondering, are they onto us? Is it over?
I mean, the situations were just absurd. In the South Tower, you have Petit and a friend hiding under a tarp. Meanwhile, in the North Tower, his other accomplices are literally hiding inside a stack of boxes while wearing business suits. Both teams were just a few feet from being discovered for hours on end.
And get this. At one point, a security guard in the South Tower just casually leans against the very spot they're hiding behind and lights a cigarette. They could hear the little flick of the lighter, the first drag. They were so close they didn't even dare to breathe. They were completely frozen. And then, just when you think it can't get any more tense, the absolute worst happens. The team loses its grip on the 450-pound steel cable. It just plunges into the void, making this tremendous noise as it scrapes against the building. The coup was seconds from being over. They had to spend hours in terrifying silence, hauling that thing back up inch by painful inch. But somehow, against all odds, they pull it off. And as dawn breaks on August 7th, after a sleepless night of pure terror and exhaustion, the wire is set. The stage is ready. Just try to put yourself in his shoes for a second. One of your feet is on the solid roof of the tallest building on Earth. The other is about to step onto a tiny 1-inch cable hanging over nothing. As Petit himself put it, it was a choice between the end of his life and something he just couldn't resist. He took the step, 1,350 feet. A quarter of a mile straight up above the streets of Manhattan. He just stepped out into the void. And for the next 45 minutes, the sky was literally his playground. He didn't just walk. No, he danced. He knelt down on one knee. He saluted the birds that were flying below him. At one point, he even laid down completely flat, just a man taking a rest among the clouds. 8 times. Think about that. Not once. He walked back and forth between those two towers 8 separate times. Down below, the entire city of New York had ground to a halt. Thousands and thousands of people were just staring up, completely silent, in total disbelief. Of course, the police were there.
They were waiting on both roofs to arrest him, but they couldn't do anything. They were just as mesmerized as everybody else. Even the cop in charge, Sergeant Daniels, knew he was watching something that would never, ever happen again.
But every performance has to end. So what happens when you finally step off the wire and, into the arms of the law? Well, this is where the fairy tale takes another wonderfully strange turn.
So, he gets arrested. They take him for a quick psychiatric evaluation, which he passed, by the way, and then the city, so completely charmed by his artistic crime, decided to drop all the charges. His punishment? His only punishment was that he had to perform another high-wire walk, for free, for the kids of New York City in Central Park.
But, a victory this big often comes with a price. The sudden, overwhelming fame and Petit's own choices after the fact ended up shattering the deep bonds of trust and friendship he had with the very people who had risked everything to help make his dream come true.
So in the end, what was this all about? It was more than just a walk. It was a statement. It was this rebellious, beautiful act that reminds us all that sometimes the most amazing things in life are found right there on the edge of what seems possible. It makes you wonder, right? Why do we dream of doing these impossible things? Well, maybe it's because, as Philippe Petit showed the entire world that day, sometimes the only way to really feel alive is to risk it all.